Thank you. Thank you very much, Kirsten. And Cesar Diaz is next. Thank you, from the Building Trades Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I thought I was going to back clean up there and be in the way of your lunch, so I'll save my 5 pages of testimony for another day. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can say "me too." Or
yeah, me too. I definitely. That is one of the beauty of batting cleanup too, is that you can agree with everything that was said. Well, most of it. Clearly, clearly there is a lot to be done. We agree with the framework proposal. We agree with a lot of my colleagues here, and let me just say that it is quite a diverse panel that you've assembled here. No secret to you, the entire state of California, every single organization out there depends on transportation. Every single constituency group depends on transportation. So for us to be here with business, labor, local government, labor management associations, you name it, we're all here asking you to help us craft a solution. We support the governor's proposal as a starting point and look forward to working with each and every one of you to find a place for a negotiated agreement. We know there's going to be a lot of give and take. There was a lot said here about some environmental processes, and as you know, we're very strong proponents of CEQA, but we know that it's something that needs to be done to get the ball rolling, to get some of these projects expedited. So that's important for us to note and to support what we see already as a framework for the existing footprint and to keep moving forward. We understand the state has 6 out of the 10 most congested and worst road conditions in the entire nation, right? And this is in each and one of your areas of the state. And our population continues to grow. We have now 33 million registered vehicles on the road. As our economy grows, more vehicles will be registered as our population grows. In fact, there was a statistic that I'd like to point out that said that in 2012 we had 326 billion vehicles miles traveled in the year 2012, right? And we have areas of the state, more poorer communities, where the economy has not bounced back as quickly as the Bay Area or the Los Angeles region, areas where they're poor, but a lot of people are actually migrating and living there, which means that they're now commuting to the urban centers where the actual job growth and opportunities are, and that, of course, will affect them. And we support that. A lot of them are our members, right? And so I think that's an important note here, because that will be vital in terms of what we see as a to fix the roads for those individuals that are constantly moving, because right now they are paying for the roads, right? Whether they're in congestion or for repairs, for loss of productivity, those constituents are paying right now. So we could either improve those road conditions and make it more efficient for them to travel, have a better environmental benefit and footprint for them as well, instead of just doing what we do now, which is let the roads crumble. Our economy is global, and we need a transportation system to be able to compete in a global economy. There's no doubt about that, and I understand every single one of you understands that, as we've been talking about the inaction in Congress and how now this rests on your shoulders to figure out something. And we have complete trust that we've seen you tackle some very difficult issues this year. Many of you, it was your first year in the legislature. And so I think that looking at how you've done things in the past and the consensus, and I think the bipartisanship that exists within this body, there's a lot of hope for us to see that in this crisis comes opportunity, and the opportunity to do something sustainable that's going to allow us to grow as a state and produce a lot of high-quality paying jobs in the construction industry, an industry that has suffered greatly from a lot of economic depression. We were the first ones to feel the recession and are the last ones to basically be getting out of the recession now, as you can see in certain areas. So I just wanted to point that out. I mean, we support strong accountability, efficient delivery of projects, a fair split between local and state, the extension of the current authority to utilize public-private partnerships as a means to attract important private sector investment. That's something that should be noted and included. Streamlining the environmental review process for certain projects and other efficiencies that help stabilize funding and project delivery at the state and local level. And Orange County has done a lot with the advanced mitigation. I think that's a great example for us to look at as well. So I say in closing, I just want to leave with somewhat of a quote from a well-known economist that said that the bottom line, deficits are bad if based on spending that exceeds tax revenues and if the economy isn't growing. Deficits are good if based on investments that will grow the economy in the future. So members, investing in our state's transportation infrastructure is the best investment we can make as our economy continues to grow and to help maintain it that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cesar and Daniel Hemick is
actually, I am
cleanup hitter.
batting cleanup, and so I agree with many things that my cohorts have said. Thank you, Honorable Chairman
might
Beal.
tell us what,
Gomez.
talk about C.C. Myers so people know.
We'll talk a little bit,
Okay.
and honorable committee members. I'm here today as a contractor as well as a taxpayer. And I would like you to know that obviously the state of the roads, we rely on them tremendously to move our materials and goods and people from project to project, and it costs us money as well when the roads aren't up to snuff. And it's a hazard. We have people that drive, in many cases, they'll drive 50, 60 miles each way a day to and from work, and the road conditions not being adequate is a real danger to our people. I support the governor's proposal as a good starting base as well, but I would ask that you could partner and collaborate to come together. That's a unique word, partnering, to come up with a common understanding. What is the deficit really? What is it we really need to take care of the problem? We have to really consider the tremendous growth that's going to happen over the next 15 or 20 years in the state of California. And while we might sit here and project that, well, we're not going to use as much gas, well, we're going to have 20, 30% more people here. So it really needs to be studied. The other thing is that truck and rail traffic are going to double in the next 10 to 15 years. So one truck causes as much wear and tear on our pavement as almost 10,000 cars on an annual basis. So we need to take that into consideration in how we tackle the problem. You know, we've been asked over the years, prior to Prop 1B, we as contractors were asked, do you have the capacity to tackle this program? We were asked many times. And I will say that at the end of the program, the capacity was still adequate enough that Caltrans brought in many more projects than they thought they were because of the competitive environment that was still here in the state of California. And I'm here to tell you today it's even more competitive. The success of Prop 1B has brought companies from Europe here, companies from the East Coast, from the Midwest. We today have more competitors than at any time in my experience in the state of California. There is no lack of competition, and it should not even be a consideration for developing the program and getting it done. If we don't fix the problem now, if you only patch it and go down the road 10 years from now, it's going to cost you way more to fix the problem due to escalations on labor, materials, etc. So the study needs to be very accurate. There's a lot of smart people in this state. There's a lot of smart people on this committee. And it deserves the due diligence to come up with as best of an answer and the best of a solution as we possibly can. And the contracting community, along with the labor community, and my colleagues here, we all stand by to help you to partner and collaborate the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Senator Cannella, you had some comments.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bell.
Appreciate it.
First, Jim, I want to thank you for all your work you've done on this. This has been, very important to you, and we've worked very closely and done a lot of things in the district. And I appreciate that. But I did want to correct. You mentioned the Speaker's plan and Chairman Bell's plan, but we also had an Assembly Republican plan and a Senate Republican plan as well that was out there, and hopefully you liked components from that as well. So I think that's a good starting point. And then it was mentioned.
Thank you for correcting me there.
No problem. I'm happy to help. Ms. Dunn, you mentioned. I thought you had great comments about the $1 billion hole in the budget. I just think we need to put this into perspective. So in 2010, when the gas tax swap happened that moved the late fees to pay off the debt, the general fund was $93.5 billion. Today, our general fund is $115.4 billion, roughly $22 billion higher. So when we say we can't use the late fees for transportation, are we really saying that transportation is our number one priority? Because that's what I keep hearing, that transportation is our number one priority. It can't just be the priority if we can get more money. And I'll give you an analogy. During the recession, companies had a very hard time. My business, for example, we went to all of our employees and we said, look, you guys know what's going on. We're going to need you to take a reduction in pay, take a reduction in benefits. We're going to have to figure out a way to make this work. And they all did, every one of them. Well, now things are pretty good. So can you imagine us going back to them and say, look, times are still tough. We need you to take a haircut again because we're not doing as well as we should be doing. That'd be outrageous. We'd all be outraged if that happened. But it seems like that's what we're doing to California drivers. We're saying, look, our revenue has grown tremendously since the Great Recession, but we can't give back $1 billion for transportation. So now, I don't know where this is going to end up. I would like to think, I'm going to have to leave, but I would like to thank Chairman Bell. If you want to talk about bipartisanship, he's the leader on that. He's been including all of us from the very beginning, and I would say it's through his sheer power that we are where we are, because even though nobody else really was paying attention to it, he continued to lead the way. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to have a discussion about revenue. But it's got to be the last discussion. We cannot keep going back to the taxpayers and saying, look, we need more and more and more, because I'll tell you, it's an insatiable appetite in Sacramento for taxes for good reasons. We've got a lot of good programs. I think people rely on state government. But if it's our number one priority, we should make it our number one priority with the resources that we currently have. And then if there's still a need, let's go back to the taxpayers and say, look, we've done what you've asked us to do. We still have a need, and I think we can do that with our head held high. So with that, again, Chairman Bill, thank you very much for your hard work. And I agree with most of the comments you guys said today, so thank you for being here.
I agree with most of the comments you made.
That sounds like a deal to me.
Well, I don't know if the numbers are correct or whether it's right or wrong, or true or false.
Too bad you can't pass it only in the Senate. But.
Yeah. Well, we didn't pass it in the Senate, so don't. We just had a committee meeting. I had some questions. Focus a minute on like looking to the future, which is what what I keep saying. We're not. We can look to the past, but we got to look to the future. C.C. Myers, okay, very famous for the work they did in emergency repairs of the collapse of the Bay Bridge. I mean, you went through a process with that to fix the bridge in a very rapid way. What wasn't too much told was the fact that it costs a lot of money. If we start having those kinds of situations where, like we're having maybe now on I-5 and those kinds of catastrophic situations like they had in Riverside with the collapse of the bridge, that's not really figured into any of these budget items in terms of cost, in terms of how much it's going to cost the state of California. Could you address that as a contractor in maybe a public-spirited way? I know when we tell you we need to have this catastrophic situation corrected, how you would approach the cost of that, and what kind of magnitude would that entail? If we had this kind of problem throughout the state in the future?
Wow, that's a pretty good question. I've got
it's
three
a
of
real
my
honest
constituents here. Maybe they ought to stand up and answer the question, but I will answer that. On several of the emergency jobs, they were actually bid. Okay.
Yeah.
So the state got the most competitive bid for that item, not necessarily the cheapest cost to fix it, whatever, because time was of the essence. And when time is of the essence, the cost isn't the primary consideration. However, we were under a budget that we had to perform that work for. okay, and there was disincentives. Now, not all of emergency contracts are that way. Some of them, if they're in a local area, the local agency just calls them up and says, "Hey, fix that for me." I mean, we've had a few of those as well. But there's an accounting for our cost. We just don't submit a single-page invoice and say that's what you owe me.
Yeah.
We have to account for every item, what the markup it is, what the price of the equipment is, our labor, and so forth. So I think as far as predicting what that might be, I'd have to stop and think about that one, because we don't know what El Nino is going to bring. We don't know any of the things that are going to happen. It's not predictable.
Emergency bids are much more expensive than regular bids.
They are. But like I said, time is
I know
of
the
the
commissioners
essence.
might comment on that.
You know,
Just-
the Maze, the 580 with the truck
Right.
overturned and burn the bridge down. Again, that was a bid project. We and our people came in. We were called on a Saturday morning to put a price in on Tuesday, and we did. And there were 5 other competitors. So, again, was it economical? No, but it was the best price that the state could get to get that work done in the time frame it needed to get done.
Okay, anybody else have comments on that?
Yeah, just a quick comment. There's a place in here, too, for some regulatory relief that amazingly doesn't exist. There was we were at a CTC meeting a few years ago, happened to be down in Southern California when a truck went under an overpass and went into flames, did huge damage on the overpass. We learned subsequently that months later that Caltrans had to conform to some additional environmental requirements on that project to meet some other agency's agenda. And it was like, what? We're trying to repair this thing, and they had to go out and mitigate, some property or some habitat in order to fix this project that was just basically a repair project. That kind of stuff just doesn't make sense. And, we could save some money if we just got real about what really does good environmentally or regulatorily. Caltrans often gets put on the hook, and now I'm sounding like a defender for Caltrans. Sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. But they have to clean water, stormwater, for not only the project that they're creating, but oftentimes they're required to clean somebody else's water that's going through that culvert or that bridge way upstream that they didn't have anything to do with. And so, we really need to take a look at why Caltrans ends up getting the burden of are they the deep pocket or something that has to just pay for all this stuff? That adds a lot to project costs.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions from other commission members? Okay, Senator Leyva and Assemblymember Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to say I thought all of your comments were excellent and very well taken. But I want to note of significance to Cesar from the building trades, and that the willingness of everybody here to compromise and get to some sort of a deal. I, too, come from the labor movement, and talking about CECO reforms was something that we have not done in the past, but the fact that we're talking about this now, I think, just shows the deep level of commitment on many different sides to finding a solution that will help everybody in California. So I thank you for that. But I thank all of you for your passion. You all seem very excited and committed to helping us find a way. So thank you. Quick question for you, Ms. Dunn. You talked about a faster approval process, maybe through efficiencies and technology. Do you have anything specific on that?
Yes, I do. And to Malcolm Dougherty's credit, he has actually been helping me kind of push Caltrans through this. There is a product that's actually in place it's been in use in Virginia for 20 years that is trying to go through the Caltrans approval process and review, and they run out of money. The time is very long. I mean, I kind of joked and said, we can get drugs through the FDA faster than we can get new products approved through Caltrans. But I know Caltrans is looking at that and trying to help move that system. Your pushing would be even better.
Okay, great.
Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of new products, and the technology is just beyond fathom of what is coming down the pipeline for us in transportation. You can see it when you just with Google cars, right?
Yeah.
When Apple is devising their own car and won't talk about it. So we're knowing there's a lot of stuff coming, but this work is critically important for that good interim time.
And if you have anything that you'd like to share, I'd love to see
Happy
it.
to do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for your presentation. Thought-provoking message that comes through loud and clear is the cost of inaction. A number of you have touched on that. One inquiry, Mr. Earp, you were talking about public opinion and that voters are acutely aware of what's happening here. I admittedly have not seen any data on this issue. I'd love to see some. If you
I can fix that.
You can provide that to me. So my question is, Ms. Dunn, you mentioned the role of leveraging federal money with Prop 1B. And can you talk a little bit about, if we go this route, we're not talking about a bond right now, we're talking about some kind of a package. Will we have that same kind of leveraging power? We're already a donor state. California's a donor state. That's not a secret to anybody. But what kind of federal money, private money can we leverage with the kinds of dollars we're contemplating on the dais here?
I would just encourage that you make it as flexible as possible to do that, whatever it is. I mean, we're talking, I had one private company come to me saying, I've got a proposal that I'd like to present a public-private partnership to repair every bridge in the state of California, to use their money matched with state or federal dollars to help do that. I don't know if that a proposal is real or not, but the very fact that they came and talked to us about that as an idea, it's this kind of funding, state funding leveraged with private dollars. Please, Congress, do something with federal dollars that just expands it further. So we've got that track record already under Prop 1B, where a little bit of federal funding would not have done a project. But it's almost like, affordable housing projects in the state. It sometimes takes 9 levels of funding just to build an affordable housing project. One pot won't do it at all. The state is the same. The state is the same on transportation issues. So I would just work into that flexibility to do as much as we can and leverage it with other dollars because the projects are expensive to build. Thank you.
Assemblymember Menendez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Earp, that project that you were talking about, is that the one where birds had built a nest in it afterwards? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
No, that's another one.
That's another one. Because that actually, that brings to light a very important point that sometimes these things, they seem so silly, but we had that situation where there was damage done to the bridge that was being constructed, and then birds decided to make their home in there, and then suddenly construction came to a halt. That's a huge cost to Californians. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and I love birds. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against birds. I'm for birds, but I'm not for holding up a project because birds are making a nest in there. Let's just move the nest. We should be able to do that. Do you agree?
Why,
To some
yes, I
point?
do.
Thank you.
I don't know. You may have birds in Southern California. I think you still do. But I know there was a project up in the north that had that. They built nets around it to try nets underneath, and they did stuff to protect the birds. And anyway, somebody sat down and penciled it out to figure out just how much we were spending per bird. And
that number was?
It was in the tens of thousands of dollars per bird, and it was a lot of money. And
Coming to you.
The difficulty is that when you try on the accountability side, those things don't always end up in the right line item, in my view, in terms of figuring out what a project's cost is. Sometimes it gets lumped into capital support or some other place in Caltrans's accounting system, and it's hard to link it back up to what it was costing us for that project. And if you were to really add all those things in, then you begin to really see what we're paying sometimes for this stuff, and we can do better.
Well, and that was kind of my point, was that we do have to consider some of these reforms. So I'm going to move from this end of the table to this end of the table and talk about the CEQA reforms that are necessary so that we don't have the holdups that we have sometimes. And I was very happy, Mr. Diaz, to hear you say that you were willing to take a look at CEQA reforms, which I know is something that is not easy for your particular industry. But the fact that you're willing to go on record, and I had somebody record it, so we'll play it for you later in case you no, but the fact that you're willing to go on record and say, look, we get it, the time has come, is very encouraging, because the fact of the matter is everybody sitting up here and everyone in both of these houses is going to have to come together, is going to have to make some compromises, and is going to have to actually negotiate, not just talk about it. That is all we've been doing. Senator Leyva and I have worked out an entire plan that we think is pretty workable, just sidebarring up here. We'd be happy to share it with you, Mr. Chairman, when we're done. But it's amazing, when you sit down and just talk openly and candidly and truthfully about your needs and wants, how much you can get accomplished. I just think we're there now. I think it's a little less talk, right? Let's get something done. So I appreciate your comments. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I just had one additional comment. I'm very intrigued by the environmental mitigation sites concept that has been done in some of the local areas to create an environmental mitigation site. And I wanted to know if any of the panelists have done that or heard of, what's their thoughts on that particular issue. I know that in Orange County they have used that, and some other communities. Can you explain what that is so we can understand it a little bit?
I've forgotten the numbers off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman, but under Measure M, there was a significant pot of money created for a mitigation fund so that the environmental community working with OCTA would come in and talk about what were the impacts of a proposed project and work out ahead of time how to mitigate them against that fund. The fund also is used actually in Orange County for a lot of other things. Because that fund exists, there are some open space issues that folks want to use, and they go to OCTA, can you use this for mitigation? So it's been an amazingly creative and a dynamic process.
So to mitigate the environment, people are required to upfront fund some of that.
And that way the litigation, which typically, if you want to stop a project, we use CEQA, right? And that way it forestalls the litigation that might otherwise stop a project.
I think Senator Bates was discussing some legislation that she wants to hold off for a little bit, but she's, I think, still working on that, correct? Yes. Senator Bates is in our committee. She and the other members here was working on that particular issue. I'm very intrigued because we had that as a program in Santa Clara County. Yes. So when we built freeways, we put the money into the environmental mitigation site, and that was used as the mitigation to impact on the environment. And people were very, very happy about it in terms of creating a improvement on the environment. Right. So, do others have comments on that? Any?
I would just say I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm happy to provide them to the committee about what the experience has been with the advanced mitigation happening in Contra Costa as well. So we've had a good experience there and are considering how to improve and expand it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, thank you very much. And we'll, at this point, we can open it up for more public comments. And we have a microphone over to the side there. You can please identify yourself and...
Mr. Chairman, members, co-chairs. Mr.'s co-chair, Mr.'s coach, is it attorneys general? Attorneys generals? Anyway, Mr. Chair, members, Joshua Shaw with the California Transit Association. We represent all of your regional and local public transit systems, including LA Metro, Santa Clara VTA, Omnitrans, Metrolink, Riverside Transit Authority, Victor Valley Transit Authority, Samtrans, Caltrain, et cetera. We are on record supporting the Chairman Bell's call for more reinvestment in highways and streets and roads. Assembly Chair Frazier has called for such. Assembly Speaker Atkins has called for such. We applaud the governor for putting a multimodal program on the table. Transit users often use our streets and roads and highways to get to transit, so we need more funding on that side. Of course, we also have to ask you to consider public transit funding. The pothole to a transit system is a bus whose useful life has been exceeded. We have old vehicles out there. Service reliability is a problem that threatens health and safety. Packed rail cars. We have 40-year-old BART cars in the Bay Area. So we need to modernize and rehabilitate our transit infrastructure. We have a $39 billion backlog over 10 years. That's why we applaud and thank Governor Brown for putting transit funding squarely on your table. If this conference committee and the legislature comes together on a transit funding package, if you use cap and trade like he has suggested, we would note the need to make that a continuous appropriation to planned transit service. We need that continuous aspect. He has proposed the competitive program that Secretary Kelly discussed, which Chairman Bell's bill improved this year. There's another cap and trade transit funding program that's formularized, so again, the transit agencies can anticipate a regular share. We support both of those, and there are other funding sources that could be considered. Senator Hill and Assemblymember Nazarian talked about cap and trade this year in their legislation. Senator Allen on this committee and Assemblymembers Chu and Bloom had some other funding sources. We want to be a resource for you in considering all of those options. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.